Welcome to Spotlight. I'm your host, Amitha. Join me weekly as I talk to guests who will inspire us to bring about positive changes in our own lives. According to the World Health Organization, about 31% of all deaths worldwide is due to cardiovascular disease. South Asians are at a higher risk than the general population. Our guest today is a multilingual, award-winning professor of epidemiology, medicine, and global health. He's going to shed some light on this topic. It's my pleasure to welcome to our show Dr. Arun Chockalingam. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to talking about cardiovascular health and particularly how it's relevant for South Asians. But first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your upbringing, your education, and your career thus far.
All right. Well, I was born in a small village in Tamil Nadu, in the south part of India. As fortune or unfortune, I lost my father when I was 5 years old. And the tragedy was that he died in Malaysia, so I have never seen him in real life. When I was 3 years old, he went to Malaysia on business. And when I was 5 years old, I got the news and the chaos at home. So I asked my sister, my older sister, I asked her, how did he die? She said he has a massive heart attack at the age of 44. So as a child, it dawned on me, or I should say I made a resolution. When I grow up, I will find a machine that will stop people from dying at a young age. Living in a village, not many people to guide me. As a child, having taken the steps to have a machine to be developed, I thought I should become an engineer. So I chose a career path and went towards engineering. Only when I was in third year of engineering, when I moved towards electronics, I realized that I've come to a wrong path. I should have gone to medical school. But nevertheless, continued on. As serendipity would have it, when I finished my engineering, in IIT Madras, they have just opened the biomedical engineering program. So I was able to meet with the director and I was able to find a position. So I enrolled myself. So things helped me, so I started learning more about physiology, pharmacology, and how the body, human anatomy works. And still more interested about the heart, and why does the heart stops all of a sudden. So that led me to do more research during my master's, and I developed what is called a vector cardiogram, a three-dimensional electrocardiogram, to identify the real location of the electrical activity of the heart. And I was able to test this equipment which I was developing at the General Hospital in Chennai. Again, as luck would have it, or serendipity would have it, a friend of mine who just finished his postdoctoral work in Canada returned back to IIT. And he said, why don't you go and do your PhD in Memorial University in Newfoundland, St. John's? I said, I'm game. I just want to find either the machine or the system that will stop people from dying. That's the driving force. So I came to Canada, registered in a graduate program in engineering, asking them to put me on a biomedical engineering degree. They said they don't have an approval, but luckily, the Dean of Graduate Studies, Dr. Aldrich, he challenged me, would you like to go to medical school and do your PhD? So I said, I'll take it, I'll go. But now, having known much about medicine now, if I got this much knowledge, I would have hesitated. Not having the knowledge was a blessing at that time.
Okay.
So I went into the medical school. So I developed isolated cardiac myocytes from the newborn rats and grew them in culture and saw these cells growing in culture. So they were growing alive and they were beating all the time. So just a single cell, you cannot do much. You can do the histogram, you can do some of those things. But if you really want to see what causes the tension in the cells, then you need to form a muscle. That means a bunch of cells have got to be connected. So this is where the engineering knowledge really helped. So I was able to grow the cells in the form of a strand, and then I was able to lift it using microspheres at the two ends, applying suction cups, and I also developed a transducer to measure the force generated by the beating cells. So eventually I managed to characterize these strands. A lot of thanks to my mentors, my professors, who put me on to learn more and more about physiology, pharmacology, biophysics. They all helped.
Well, you drew inspiration from your own life, and you were on a mission, and you have taken it now globally with that research, and that's helping us since, as I mentioned, it's one of the most common causes of death in the world. So hats off to you for going with your mission, and we are lucky that you're here in Canada. We want to talk more about the research and again why it is particularly important for South Asians like us. But before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to the 1995 recipient of the Hind Ratan Award for NRIs, and he is shedding light on the topic of cardiovascular health. Let's go back to Dr. Arun Chockalingam. So, Professor, that's great. You have told us about your journey, and we are lucky that now you are focusing on the cardiovascular health. So now let's turn our attention to just cardiovascular health in general, clinically, and why is it that it's particularly important for South Asians?
South Asians are at a much higher risk for cardiovascular disease than any other race. When we say South Asian, it is a whole Indian subcontinent, the people who have come from there. Our own research back in about, say, 15, 20 years ago in Canada, which we did for the first time, it revealed that the Indians have got the South Asians have a much higher risk for cardiovascular disease, while much less for cancer. This is about 20 years ago. But in today's realities, even the South Asians have got a very high risk for cancer. Could be due to our changing pattern of diet, changing pattern of lifestyle. The way you look at cardiovascular disease, it has got two components. There are some of the risk factors that you cannot change, but some you can. The one that we cannot change is you cannot change your genetic profile because you don't have a choice to choose who your parents are. Likewise, you don't have a choice on your gender. either male or female, is predetermined. And then the third factor that you cannot change is the aging. All of us are biologically aging, and our system undergoes. So these three things we cannot change. But there are plenty of other things that we can change.
Mm-hmm. So do you see, you already mentioned that environmental factor when it comes to the cancer risk having increased for South Asian over the years. So when it comes to cardiovascular health, what are some of these environmental factors and something that we can actually make a change?
Well, we were not born smoking tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
So tobacco smoking is the number one cause, which is an acquired habit. We are actually, people who are smoking are paying to get the disease.
It's true. I guess it started as a fashion fad and
That's
people
right.
didn't realize that it has.
And then you become addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you spend a lot of your time and your money.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're changing your health completely.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one.
I guess people who are already into it, they do have aids that they can go to their doctor for trying and quit smoking. So that may be something they want to look into.
Yes, absolutely. Because there are ways and means that we can reduce.
But if you are not already smoking, don't take it up. That's what Dr. Chockalingam is saying.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the second factor is you are what you are based on what you eat and when you eat and how you eat.
Well said.
So it's a question of diet.
Mm-hmm.
So if we end up eating a lot of fried food, then we will end up with more clogged arteries and more heart disease.
Mm-hmm. On that topic, it's interesting. So if we go back to what you told about the cancer risk increasing, the South Asians who are coming from the Indian subcontinent to, say, North America, what changes in the diet? Because a lot of people stay with the same, as they say, desi or Indian food and preparation. So what is different here compared to preparing the same food back in the Indian subcontinent?
There are two aspects. Number one, the change in affordability makes you to take in large quantity.
So quantity, the amount.
Okay. And the second, because of affluency and also because of the pent-up demand that you never had, you end up exploring all the rich diet. And the portion size is very critical. If we can't take or taste everything and take in small quantities, then life is much better. I'm sure you all remember the old saying, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Very well said. Always prevent. Why suffer the disease? And then sometimes it may be too late to even reverse the process when it comes to clogged arteries. And then you probably then end up on medications for life. So why even go that route if you can prevent it? So.
And the third parameter I would consider is the physical activity. Many of the South Asians who are coming, including me, who came to Canada, number one, we want to establish ourselves. So we end up working hard. And we work hard at the risk of our health. And going to exercise is the last thing in our mind. You've got a bit of time, might as well work and eat your lunch at the workstation. Don't even take a little bit of a walk. So we have become totally sedentary.
That's true. Actually, back in the Indian subcontinent, if I can think back People are really more active. They tend to walk more, and they're more social. But like you said, once we come here, sometimes in the struggle of trying to get settled, we are just in a materialistic, mechanical life, and we tend to do a lot of sedentary stuff. So yes, taking up physical activity definitely is important.
Amitha, you said back home, back in South Asia, but things are also changing there.
It slowly, yes.
Because of the globalization, the affordability has come there. Good for them. The economic development is good. And again, people are chasing the Western life. And there also, that is why the increase in heart disease, increase in cancer. So we face the same problem that we face here.
So it's happening everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And the fourth factor is the consumption of alcohol. Having come to North America, having it's freely available, the consumption of alcohol has gone up. So many of these things are avoidable.
So the main things, like Dr. Chockalingam said, don't take up smoking, or if you are, get help quitting smoking. Take up eating in moderation and properly. Take up physical activity, and minimize the amount of alcohol intake. So that's great advice, Dr. Chockalingam. Like you said, it's better to prevent than get stuck with treatment and no turning back. So we want to talk more about the topic, but before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking about cardiovascular health with Dr. Arun Chockalingam. So, Professor, we talked about some of the preventative measures, and this has come through with all the years of research that you have put into it, both scientifically and clinically. So what's upcoming in this area? I mean, it's constantly something new coming up with cardiovascular health, and that's why hopefully we are seeing that decreased mortality and morbidity. But what's upcoming and what's exciting?
Globally, the cardiovascular mortality and morbidity, or the death and disability, practically remains the same. Although we see some decrease in many of the developed worlds, it's all compensated far beyond in the developing world. Do you know that 80% of cardiovascular death and disability is in the developing countries? So that means we need to address with a mass education and making people to understand and make them aware that many of the risk factors for heart disease are preventable. This is like a gun. The genetics, people say immediately, well, you are a South Asian, genetically you are wrong. Genetics is only one part. That is like a bullet and the gun. And you just load the gun and leave it quiet. Nothing happens. Your physical activity, your eating habits, your environmental factors that you are not caring for is a trigger. So the minute you trigger, then it explodes. So likewise, if we are careful about our environmental situation, as we talked earlier, if we can be careful in what you're eating and spending some time physically active every day, then you can very well reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, and even the cancer.
Well said. So I love the analogy, like you're like a static gun loaded with a bullet, but it doesn't get fired if you take care of yourself. And it's probably a good idea then also to visit your doctor and get some of these markers checked. You already talked to us earlier on about the electrocardiogram, for which you have created a 3D vector version. But things like that, blood work, your physical exams will give you a baseline as to where you're at. And then if you already know where you're at and you know your genetics, and then you go that extra mile with preventative measures, like you said, your gun remains static and it never needs to get fired through the rest of your life. So that's good advice, yes.
Yeah. The sad part is most people don't even know that they have either high blood pressure or heart disease until they get the first heart attack. Mm-hmm. So once you are aware, half the battle is won. So be aware, and as you rightly said, go for annual checkup. Mm-hmm. And then have a blood pressure monitor at home and measure it. Mm-hmm. If possible, you should measure every day, if not periodically. And likewise, now the increasing epidemic is the diabetic. Mm-hmm. So it's a good idea for people to check their blood glucose now and then. And unfortunately, if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, take precautions and change your lifestyle and follow what your doctor says. Mm-hmm.
So number one, be aware of your own body and your own health. Don't take it lightly and don't get stuck in the mechanical rut and forget about yourself. Dr. Chockalingam, I'm going to digress for a bit here and see, do you practice what you preach? Do you take all the measures to help your own physical and mental health? I understand that apart from all the amazing work that you do in this area, you have other feats under your belt as well. You've actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. Tell us a bit more.
Well, it's quite interesting. That's about some 15, 20 years ago when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. At that time, I was busy working on my research like any other South Asian, working hard and not being physically very active. Mm. So one of my colleagues, she's actually a few years older than me, she said, Arun, you and I are going to Arusha for a global health conference. Mm. Arusha is on the foothills of Kilimanjaro. Shall we climb Mount Kilimanjaro? I said, Betsy, you must be nuts. I don't even go 5 floors by walk. I use the elevator. But she inspired me. For about a minute, she looked into my eyes and said, why can't you? I said, I'm very busy. I can't take a week off to go on the mountain climbing.
But you did it.
Yes. So and then she again looked and said, what is 1 week in your life's time? Then I thought for a second, yeah, 1 week in your whole life is nothing. Then immediately I just told her, yes, I'll go with you, but having no experience. And within 3 months, we were traveling to Africa. So all that I did the next 3 months was to practice myself.
But you did it, Dr. Chockalingam. It was, you went to a global summit, you took up on the challenge by your colleague, and that's exactly what you're doing for us today. For us, you are that colleague who is giving us information and, challenging us to take care of our own health in cardiovascular, and it's great to see that you also practice what you preach. Yes, there was a hesitancy in the beginning, but you went for it. Yeah. So that's great, Dr. Chockalingam. You do practice what you preach, and that inspires us to do the same as well. And I have to say thank you so much for coming today.
You're very welcome.
And giving us more insight about this topic. Is there a website that our viewers can follow you at?
I don't have my own website, but you can look me up at University of Toronto website. And the other thing is that for more information, it's best to go to WHO website.
Okay, World Health Organization website, and we can find more information. Thank you so much, Dr. Chockalingam. We wish you all the best in all the research, and thank you for helping us make a difference.
Thank you, and I hope everybody gets well and everybody gets physically active. And hopefully we will be free of cardiovascular disease and cancer and diabetes. I think that is my personal ambition in life.
Thank you very much.
To make people healthy.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So that was Dr. Arun Chockalingam, who has inspired us to take care of our own health by taking action and taking care of ourselves. Well, that's a wrap for this week's show. Thank you for watching us. Continue to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and write to us at spotlight@ethnicchannels.com. Until next week, this is Amitha signing off, encouraging you to be an active participant in your own health.